Today on the Topping Show, Bud Light tweets support for the women's soccer team but can't define what a woman is. PETA joins the Bud Light boycott and asks Kid Rock for help. Jason Aldean's song is censored on the terms of racism, but actually turns out to be number one hit song and is actually racist. Barbie Movie turns out to be pro-feminist and anti-male, well, not so much of a surprise. A anti-woke and woke app hits the marketplace to try to guide consumers. Biden secretly meets with the United Auto Workers president. New York City is turning migrants away. Tesla profits increase, but still not back to the previous levels. Amazon One Palm payment is going to be rolled out to all of the Whole Foods. Petco is coming to Lowe's, and Goldman Sachs profits are down 58%. All of that and much more today on The Topping Show. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of Topping Show is sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder release twice a day. Guys say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me. That's a joke. If you're an IT leader or business owner and need a little assistance, you reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Now, going on to the business part of the podcast, you have Netflix having their stock drop by $20 billion, which is quite astronomical, and yet another reason I'm kind of happy I didn't invest in them. Well, I'd rather just reinvest myself, but I digress. Now, many analysts are looking at this equation from a few different reasons as to why their stock plummeted so quickly within a matter of days. And it looked like the stock specifically dropped from a high point of $481.70 per share all the way down to $427.27 per share. Now, that being said, it's still a huge value per share of a stock, and their revenue is increasing, but there's a lot of uncertainty. So their Q2 revenue was $8.2 billion, which is huge. That's great. That's a lot of cash. Revenue. Profits. Now, that $8.2 billion is better than the same quarter last year. So fiscal Q2 last year, it looks like their revenue was 2.7% less than this year. That being said, the United States is terrible with inflation, blame the government for most of that, and many might say it's about the same in terms of value. And it's especially interesting to see the stock crash all of a sudden because just a couple days ago, we were announcing how they had achieved 6 million additional subscribers. Perhaps it's because they're not so much profitable, and there's a lot of uncertainty in Hollywood, which it would be a total shame if we couldn't have all that amoral crap hoisted upon the market. Well, I'm sure some people appreciate it. Most of Hollywood, I think, is a copy-paste, which a computer could easily do and will easily do. One of those things where time shall tell to see how many of the people in the Actors Guild are really safe and how many of the writers are really safe from being replaced by the robots as they take over. But as I always say, time shall tell. Now, they're also altering their plans at Netflix. So Netflix actually canceled their basic no ad plan, which was previously $9.99 per month. However, thankfully they're grandfathering you in, which is a common term, as in you get to keep it if you already have it. And they're actually pushing people towards an ad-supported model, which is technically cheaper to the consumer at $6.99 per month. However, obviously, they actually make more money off that because the advertisers, of course, pay them a lot of money. Traditional to, what does this remind me of? Oh yeah, cable TV, the thing they were out to set out and destroy. It seems like kind of coming full circle with advertising creeping back up because a lot of these production studios, like streaming services, it's kind of a crapshoot. You don't know if a show is going to be a hit or it's going to fail epically. Some you can certainly predict more than others, just given a little bit of evidence around it. But a lot of uncertainty on what's going to happen with Hollywood. How long could Netflix hold out? There's rumors they could hold out more than others, but there's some people saying if the Hollywood strike isn't resolved by Christmas, there's not going to be any content next year because obviously you have to have a ramp-up period where they're producing stuff, in theory, 1 or 2 original ideas, mostly copy and paste, and then they have to have the long actual production, actually putting the materials together. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, but that's one of the reasons the stock is also precipitously dropping at Netflix. Time shall tell to see where they go from there. Now, other interesting business news, you have Tesla. Their profits are climbing. Now, they report a much greater profit than they originally expected. That's also despite them trimming the cost per units, with Elon starting to actually embrace traditional automotive discounting, which is a cliche as old as time. It's a joke in pretty much a lot of sales communities and industries, automotive specifically as well. If you just wait till December, you're going to get 20-30% off. Like, I remember back in my day, Cadillac would give like $10,000 off MSRP just as an additional discount Q4 because the new model year was coming in and they wanted to clear out the old inventory. That's kind of the traditional methodology of the automotive industry. Because, and this isn't a new thing, at least Chevrolet was the original company to do this about 100 years ago. They basically have the same car, but they slap on new body panels and new different things to make it look new. So, because the body panels and the accents were different enough, the car would look older and people would pay more for a newer looking car. Hence why every year there's a new model. Tesla's a little bit different. They're, granted, it'll never be as reliable as a Rolex, but some people compare them to a Rolex in the fact that a Rolex Submariner, shows how uncultured I am. I have a Garmin I got way back in the day for free, so you can't beat that from a friend. But the Submariner, that sounds right. That Rolex, it really hasn't changed for, 50 plus years. They look about the same because the changes, if any, are very, very subtle. Tesla, with many other vehicles, are also doing that same methodology where you can't, unless you're a Tesla enthusiast, you really can't tell the difference between a 1 year and a 5 year Tesla, besides the fact that the 5 year Tesla will leave you stranded on the side of the road because it has no range left because the batteries are crap. But outside, they look about the same. So there really wasn't much of an incentive for Tesla to do these discounts. They also had an overwhelming demand for the product, and they didn't have enough of the product to go around. Good old-fashioned supply and demand. It's just a mini lesson right there. I know they don't teach much in schools these days. It's a little mini lesson. Now, Tesla actually specifically reporting adjusted earnings of $3.1 billion, which equated to about 91 cents per share. Publicly traded companies, that's usually one of the top metrics that they look for is the profits and the revenue per share. And that is astronomically better than the last quarter. Actually 20% more than the last quarter. And it'll be interesting to see. They actually beat the finance nerds. The finance analysts, they actually thought they were only going to get 82 cents per share. So beating Wall Street, of course, if you're publicly traded, one of the most important things you need to be doing, in addition to all the other things, including servicing and doing the best things for your clients and your customers. Now, the profit margin during this quarter was 18.2%, which was better than expected and is admittedly better than most automotive companies. You look at companies like General Motors, it's usually single digits when you have the blended average of their small subcompact vehicles and the trucks. You look at the fleet average, or the average of all the vehicles, it's not that great because some might compare them, I would never compare them to McDonald's, where they just put out a massive volume regardless of quality. They also killed the stick shift in the Corvette, which some enthusiasts would never forgive them. Yeah, including myself. That's ridiculous. Why would you get rid of 3 pedals? The best thing for a true sports vehicle. I digress. But also 23% of the C7, the previous Corvette models, like between 19 and 23% and 27%, depending on the year, all those owners chose stick shifts, but GM still decided to kill it. The opposite, I could write a book on the business blunders of them. However, back to Tesla, they had an 18.2% profit margin. So that was pretty good for the industry. That was exceptionally good for the automotive industry. However, it's going down precipitously from what it used to be when Tesla was in its heyday. I mean, a year ago, their margin was about 25%, which it might not sound crazy big in terms of, 18.2 compared to 25. But when you're talking about billion-dollar companies, that's astronomical. And it'll be interesting to see, does Elon pull back on some of these incentives as they try to roll out new vehicles and get the Cybertruck finally hit the market, given the provenance of the people given the Tesla fan club and the uniqueness of the design, I wouldn't think they would need to discount that truck, especially because a lot of competition, they're not EVs from the ground up. Like the Ford F-150, the very first Ford EV F-150 Lightning, they basically just slapped electric crap into a Ford F-150 truck. It wasn't an EV from the ground up. They're getting better as they're putting more money into the engineering of the EV vehicles at Ford. I believe the E-Mach, or the bastardized Mustang, which they call the Mustang E-Mach for some stupid reason, even though it's an EV with no 3 pedals or no V8. But I digress. I know the regular Mustang has a V6 and 4, but those were built from the ground up. The truck at Ford was more of an afterthought in terms of the engineering. It wasn't ground up as an EV. Now you do have Rivian, which is perhaps the industry leader for EV trucks. That company has a lot of issues of itself, basically being kept alive partially because of a big purchase from Amazon. Amazon also owns a lot of their stock as well. But with Elon, I don't think they better not discount the Cybertruck, because they need cash to pay off that thing. They've been hyping up for 4 to 5 years now. And it was last Saturday, the first one finally came off the assembly line in the great country of Texas. No, I didn't misspeak. One of the best things about Texas, it was a nice meme. Before your state was a state, it was just land. Before Texas was a state, it was a country. They say many things about Texas. It is pretty awesome, I'm not going to lie. Now, it looks like for the first quarter of Tesla, their profit was 19.3%. So they're actually going down this year. So Q1, they had 19.3% profit. Now they're at 18.2%. They got to reverse this trend. Their stock there's a lot of rumors it's going to go down a little bit, and it went down, I believe, 8 to 7%, that's a big ding. But I think a lot of people are just uncertainty. How big of a success will the Cybertruck be? They had a lot of pre-orders, but again, I believe it was $100 like deposit or something like that. There's a big difference between throwing down $100 to reserve something versus paying, I don't know what this is going to cost, 150, maybe not. Who knows? I'm still trying to find the actual solid numbers of how much that Cybertruck will cost, but that's going to be pretty revolutionary that they could evolve their fleet from just sedans and little SUVs. They can go to the truck. If they can really go after the truck market, which is the most difficult one to go after in terms of consumer adaptation rates and adoption rates, that'll be interesting to see. Could that really increase the value of Tesla over time? That will be one of their biggest challenges. Now, other interesting business news, you have Amazon One Palm payment method rolling out to all Whole Foods. Now, of course, a couple years back, Amazon decided to get in the brick and mortar business with the premium organic fancy food company Whole Foods, headquartered in Austin, Texas, which some call Diet Texas. And it's probably one of the most popular organic food chains in the United States. And they had this idea where instead of, cash or a credit card, which has worked since the invention, physical currency since the dawn of time, some might say, but they thought it'd be better to use a handprint. Because, who wants privacy anymore? Sure, why not have a handprint? Do they want a prick of blood as well to make sure it's your DNA? As they also use facial scanning recognition software. And some consumers see the convenience over their security, which much wiser than anyone alive these days. Benjamin Franklin once said, "Those who trade freedom for security deserve neither." Something to think about. No one's probably heard that because they don't teach that in public schools anymore. But this creepy technology, which, you're giving them more of your biometric data for free. Now they just have it. Now, this is going to be to all 500 Whole Foods stores by the end of 2024. And it was just a little small program that they launched at Amazon Go stores back in Seattle 2020. And then they went to Panera Bread. They went to a couple, I believe it's a Denver's Coors Field, which, of course, is a sports balls team. And apparently, the consumers like enough where they're going to do a big rollout. Now, Whole Foods, of course, is more of a niche store. There's only 500 relative to something like Walmart. They have like 10,000 or 12,000 global stores. So it'll be interesting to see what's the mass public adaptation rate. Is this something really consumers are really aching to have? Or is it something that is just going to be a fad? We've seen a lot of these interesting payment fads throughout the years. It's hard to say which one's going to stick. And maybe someone will feel this is less intrusive than like a facial recognition software. I don't know, it'll be interesting to see, but an interesting value add, some might say, for Whole Foods. Now, going on to other business news, you have Petco coming to Lowe's, which Lowe's would just say is just Diet Home Depot, or Home Depot for women. If you look at where they advertise and the demographics, they are very good at the niche they've carved out. Home Depot is, if you look at the demographics and what they serve, it's mostly for contractors and businesses. Then you have your DIY section as well. But Lowe's, in terms of their marketing, they're really going after the families, the parents. They don't cater to the contracting community and construction community in that regard. So somewhat joking, but there's a little truth in that. And Lowe's is also kind of known for copying Home Depot, where Home Depot will have analysts, work really hard to find out where on the map is going to be the perfect spot to put the store, where's the most strategic spot. And then Lowe's just goes, hey, they chose that place. Let's go across the street. Which someone called a dick move, but some think is somewhat hilariously, that's kind of funny. Let the other store do all the work and all the thinking. Now, it looks like they're actually going to be expanding their partnership. They started this idea a couple years back with just a couple stores, I believe 9 to 13, where they're actually having like a mini store inside of the store. So you have a little mini Petco inside of the Lowe's. Now, it looks like now their plan is to be in 300 stores by the end of 2023. So that's a pretty exponential increase. And it's an interesting idea where they're trying to address and give more value to their current clients. We also have to wonder, well actually, let's hear what they have to say. Now, it looks like they'll also have Petco, oh wow, this is a mouthful. Petco's Vetco clinics will be in 75 locations within, and they'll be available once per month. Vetco. That gets an A-. That's kind of business brilliance right there. So it's the veterinarian who works at Petco, and it's called Petco Vetco. Which, that's a little bit of business brilliance. I appreciate that kind of marketing. That's pretty good. They'll have, that person apparently is a fully licensed veterinarian, and the services include, microchipping, vaccinations, and preventive medicines. Pretty big categories. Now, when asked for comment talking to the Lowe's CEO, Marvin Elizo, he said, quote, "This partnership is part of Lowe's larger strategy of servicing rural clients. While in the years past, our penetration of rural and remote stores was reviewed as a competitive disadvantage, we now expect these stores to be a key component of our operating profit growth over the next 3 to 5 years," unquote. So that is a pretty good point. I almost wonder if they're trying to compete with Tractor Supply. When I think of kind of rural stores that have multiple categories in addition to the standard, you need, lumber or cabinets or spray paint. I'm trying to think of, all the stuff I bought. I've been there. Pretty much every component, many of the components to make this table actually went to Home Depot to get. The antique Barbie wood, though, was actually independent supplier. But I digress. They have a lot of things there, and it'd be interesting to see what the adoption rate of how many consumers go to Lowe's actually appreciate that, or if apparently the preliminary rollout was successful enough to warrant this. But part of me also, it reminds me of, I believe it's called Papa. Not the best book name, but it's the Papa John's book written by the founder, John. And he talked about, he turned around the company twice successfully. And during the demise of one of the eras where the company was decreasing profits and their food was getting worse, it was an instance where they're losing focus on their core competency, and they had all the stores with a bunch of crap you don't need, like candy, movies, CDs, books, like stuff that doesn't make any sense in a pizza delivery store, they would have there. And many said it actually distracted the consumer as well as the company from their core competency, which is making pizza pies. Better ingredients, better pizza. I believe they trademarked that actual phrase brilliantly enough. But it'll be interesting to see with Petco, does this help bolster their profits as they try to give more value to their current clients? Or is it going to maybe take away? Time shall tell to see how that goes long term, and thankfully I'm not invested, so it can go either way. Doesn't make a difference to me. Now, going on to the culture part of the podcast, you have Bud Light supporting women's soccer, but they can't really define what a woman is. A fascinating phenomenon in the United States these days. Now, Bud Light on their Twitter, what's a nice way of saying this? It's probably a scientific way of saying birds crashing or just falling over like a clumsy bird. Bud Light is the Dodo of Twitter. Someone make a t-shirt. That's a brilliant idea. I need to write that down. But I digress. So maybe that'll be their new nickname, the Dodo of Twitter. Now, Bud Light tweeted, quote, "Let's go at USWNT," which I had to Google because I had no idea what the heck that was. Apparently, that is the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team, which does exist. fact check. I looked into that as well. Now, all this comes from this brilliant business, the brilliant marketing mind of Alyssa Heiderchild, where she was someone who would drink alcohol heavily in college, and when she was very proud on LinkedIn to be the first female alcohol industry marketing leader, and she chose brilliantly to have Dylan Mulvaney as a brand ambassador. Dylan Mulvaney is a trans activist, never had the surgery, but dressed up as a woman for 365 days, celebrated each day with a cliche, many would say a woman face impersonation, such as wearing high heels and prancing through the forest, which I asked my mom and sister, that's not a thing. But Dylan represented it as a thing. Bud Light hired Dylan as brand ambassador, and the boycott began, and they lost about $28 billion in stock valuation, as well as millions of dollars in sales, and the boycott began, which there will be business courses taught on that for years, as to the perfect example why you do not want to get involved in politics. If you make a product that's engineered, engineered is a very kind term for Bud Light. It's it's basically rainwater with maybe Flint, Michigan rainwater water with a couple hops thrown in there, pejoratively. But it's one of those things where the brand just crashed and no one is buying it. And every time they tweet, the response is always much more entertaining than their actual tweet. They are ratioed in minutes. Now, this recent one where they said, let's go United States women's national soccer team. Now, within 12 hours, their tweet had 297.1 views and 981 likes. So that's 0.35% liked. Yes, that's also known as bad. That's not even 1%. Now, it looks like the top response, which ratioed them, was done by Benny Johnson, who's a political commentator, and he tweeted, quote, "You're cheering on a women's soccer team. Answer me this question, what is a woman?" unquote. His tweet got 19.2 thousand views and 1,290 likes. That, in the math departments, that's 6.72% of the people who viewed his post liked it. Immediately ratioed. Now, the other response that got a lot of public support was a poll that said, "Let's go UNWNT. But how about Bud Light? Where should they go? One in five, two. Oh, sorry. 1 in my fridge, 2 out of business." There's a poll. Vote 1 or 2. 1 in your fridge, 2 out of business. Out of the votes, so what do you had? 1,111 people vote in that little poll. 7.9% said Bud Light should be in their fridge. 92.1% said Bud Light should be out of business or in the trash. That's that's pretty bad. Now, it is interesting to note there is an increase in Twitter censorship as the new CEO, Miss Macarena, whatever her name is, I digress. She has an advertising background, and of course her goal is to actually help make the company profitable, which unfortunately means watering it down and making it increasing the censorship. So I have noticed a couple positive responses come to the forefront, but it'll be interesting to see how many of them remain or how many of the negative comments really overwhelm them. But this is yet another example of Bud Light getting Twitter ratioed in minutes and just completely failing the current culture war. Will they be able to recover from that nosedive? I'm pretty skeptical. Now, other interesting culture news, you have PETA joining the Bud Light boycott and asking Kid Rock for help. Now, PETA, you don't really have to worry about what they are. They don't do much except annoy the hell out of other people. They are apparently the activist group that shames people for eating meat, which has been the best source of protein since the dawn of time, and one of the healthiest things you can eat. But it's one of my favorite things they might be the perfect example of being insufferable. Whereas most people, if you don't want to eat meat, they're not going to shame you and say, "Why aren't you eating a hamburger?" Or "Why are you eating a salad?" However, the inverse is quite true. If someone's in PETA, or frankly, if you're a vegetarian, you'll never not hear them talk about it. And they'll never stop bullying you to acquiesce to their, what's a nice way of saying, perverted worldview or skewed worldview. It's ridiculous. But I digress. They're mainly known for being a ridiculous animals' rights, even though they actually kill lots of animals and perform cruel acts themselves. But another topic for another time. Someone was saying, is this a false flag? What's going on here? I mean, PETA traditionally is more left, politically speaking, and fascinating enough, they want to join this boycott, apparently. Now, apparently, PETA actually sent a letter to Kid Rock asking him to take a stand against Budweiser for mutilating Clydesdale horses for their marketing tools, which apparently he's still serving Bud Light at his bar in Nashville, Tennessee, which is called the Big A. It's a nice way of saying derriere instead of rear. Honky Tonk and Rock and Roll Steakhouse. C- for marketing. That's too long. It's losing all meaning. That's way too long. No, it's even worse. Kid Rock's Big A Honky Tonk and Restaurant and Rock and Roll Steakhouse. Dude, that is D plus for marketing. I know whose restaurant it is, but geez Louise, it'd be longer of a name. Now, specifically, PETA said, quote, only God knows why Budweiser gets away with such a low-life thing as cutting off a horse's tailbone. This is, unquote, that's from the PETA senior VP. They have a president? What a waste of resources. I mean, very important person. VP Kathy Guillermo. And she also said, PETA is painting Kid Rock as a picture of the company's cruelty towards the Clydesdales in hopes that he will make his restaurant a Budweiser-free zone, unquote. And they further said in the letter, say, quote, will you consider halting sales of Budweiser products at Kid Rock's Big A Honky Tonk and Rock and Roll Steakhouse until Anheuser-Busch commits to stopping the amputation of its Clydesdale tailbones, unquote. Now, I don't think anyone who actually really cares about that. That statement's pretty par of the course for everything PETA says, but I think the real interesting thing is, why is Kid Rock still serving that pisswater beer at his establishment? He was one of the first people to join the boycott against the company. He famously shot a couple cases of Bud Light with a full-auto MP4, I was going to say MP5, MP40s earlier before my time. Still German engineering, but he was one of the ones who helped the viralness of the boycott really take off. He literally had a video where he said F Bud Light. That was kind of the crescendo of the video. He does a HK slap, and he shoots up all the beer. And it went viral, got millions of views. Everyone was talking about it, and that really sparked and added fuel to the boycott. But why is he still serving it at his restaurant? Is it because it's a licensing thing only, where he basically just gets paid a royalty for them using his name, which is something that certainly happens, especially with celebrities and endorsements? Or is he an active operator of the restaurant and still have the beer? I think that's the more interesting part of the story, is why is he still apparently selling Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch InBev products if he personally believes that he is against what their marketing department decided to do. And that's really bizarre. And we'll see. Time shall tell, but that is an unusual thing to happen for sure. Now, other interesting culture news, you have Jason Aldean's song being pulled and censored and then going on to becoming one of the number one songs. So he recently released a song, and I'll play a second or two, and it's called Try That in a Small Town, which, good gosh. So it's right now on the YouTube, it is number one trending for music. Now, if you click that subscribe button, it really helps us out. Also, like and comment this video. To go number one is astronomical for a feat for a music video. And they're saying this is racist. And as usual, I always think it's ironic that people who are calling racism are usually the most racist people themselves. We'll divulge and we'll talk a little bit, we'll dive deeper into why in a second here. So he's got the country, he's got the Texas hat, so he's already getting an A to A plus for marketing. Carjacking a lady at a red light. No, last time I checked, many groups of people perform robbery in that way. So unless you're racist and think one group of people, then then you would be racist.
Pull a gun on the owner of a liquor store. You think it's cool, act a fool if you like. Cuss out a cop, spit in his face.
Now, I can't help but laugh at the people saying this music video, this is racist. Now, he's showing instances of rioting during the Summer of Love, also known as George Floyd protests, obviously. And right now he's showing a cliche Antifa member spitting in a police officer's face, which is a liberal white woman in the video. But the people protesting this song are saying it's because he's against African Americans? I don't see how that tracks.
Flag and light it up. Yeah, you think it's tough. Well, try that in a small town. See how far you make it down the road. Around here we take care of our own. You cross that.
Around there, we take care of people on their own. How's that controversial of a statement? That's part of the benefits of being a small town is you're actually a community. You're invested with each other. You're invested in the community. You're invested in the infrastructure. That's one of the upsides. That's why, personally, I wouldn't be happy living in a very congested city where it's so many people. There's kind of dilutes any form of community you might have.
It won't take long for you to find out. I recommend you don't. Try that in a small town.
Should also be noted that, fascinating enough, the previous mayor, what was the I always have to use, you know that little trick with names where you think of a thing and it reminds you of a person. So I remember it's Beetlejuice Lori Whitefoot. Yeah, that's what it is. She actually told police to stand down during when people were robbing liquor stores and riots in Chicago. They also diverted riots away from the financial district to the suburbs and residential areas. Why people were not more upset with that politician is beyond me. Wait, I did think of something that I think is offensive about this song. Most of the band is not wearing cowboy hats. I know it's not required necessarily for a country song, but it does help.
That my granddad gave me. They say one day they're gonna round up.
Actually, now that I think about it, this song's making me country. I have to do it. All right, there we go. All right. Now I can listen to the song a little bit better.
That shit might fly in the city. Good luck. Try that in a small town. See how far you make it down the road. Around here we take care of our own.
We take care of our own. How is that offensive? No, that's actually a good thing to actually take care of your community and your friends and your family. Oh, so you actually have a man stopping a robbery. A fascinating phenomenon that is unknown in places like, it's a nice way of saying Chicago. Chicago. But small towns, people tend to defend the community. Now, some might say this is very triggering. He is showing an American flag, which to some, that gives people heart attacks. So maybe that's why they're upset. This also says, God bless America, which may actually make some people convulse as they have a visceral reaction to it, which I find especially hilarious. Uh-oh, he's showing a father-son duck hunting. Oh, perhaps that's a controversy. more pictures of Nostalgia America.
These farmers are dropping their own crops for the day. A friend is in need, and they've come to help.
It's what this community and a lot of our communities stand for.
Hey, they have more diversity. This guy in a wheelchair. I thought they... again, the hypocrisy.
Somebody needs some help, you'll get it.
So how is that controversial in any way? I have no idea, but we're gonna read what they claim. So this is what the boycotters are claiming, and this song is actually pulled off of Country Music Television. It's a country song, which again shows you how infected most media communities are, where they're very one-sided politically speaking. You can actually have a video that embodies the sexual glorification and actually sexual objectation of women. You could have songs that promote violence, drugs, robbery, all types of illegal activities. Those songs don't get pulled, but this is the one people are upset about. Fascinating. So it looks like the people are claiming the parts that are specifically problematic, which anytime I hear that word, I'm immediately suspicious there's something wrong with this person. Like, problematic, that's a big, as they would say, a red flag. Now, they're worried that, they say this is racist. Sucker punch someone on a sidewalk. That lyric. No, every race is human. Humans are violent. That's not specific in any way. Carjack an old lady at red light. Again, why are these people assuming that's one race? That's disgusting for them to think that way. Pull a gun on an owner of a liquor store. Yeah, you think that's cool. Y'all act like a fool. Cuss out a cop, spit in his face, stop on the fag, light it up. Yeah, you think that's tough. Try in a small town. Those are all the lyrics they claim are racist. And remember, Antifa, that's probably the best example of a lot of white folks. A lot of liberal folks there. Just as there's violent people on the left and the right. It's not a one race type of thing around here. So yeah, when it comes to that song being considered racist, that's ridiculous. And thankfully, you've seen people push back and say, yeah, this is literally, are you saying that small towns are only one race? That's not, no. Literally, small towns are just good, wholesome people come together. And guess what? All races, all creeds, all faith. Which is, many people just say that's the best thing about America. Now, unfortunately, politics are bifurcating a lot of people in terms of political division. I'm foolish enough to hope and think that we have more in common than not. We can actually come together for morals and values. Time, of course, shall tell. Now, as we go to the non-country part of the podcast, you have the Barbie movie. So the Barbie movie has finally come out, and it's Mattel's worst fears. It is extremely feminist and anti-male, which, a little redundant there. Now, this is actually a review written by, I believe it was Matt Gaetz' wife, and he's a politician, I think, best known for trying to abolish the ATF, which is a great way to get political points and votes. I mean, it gets headlines to say that, and also, the Second Amendment used to be respected, so it'd be nice if that would happen again. Now, it looks like when she actually went to see the movie, she was saying how pretty much every man depicted in the film is either stupid or a bigot. And it literally has Ken going to, I guess, visit Los Angeles and becoming a pseudo alpha male and becoming pejorative towards women. And then, of course, she has to hoorah feminism, and it's very combative, the whole movie. And I can't help but think how hilarious it would be. No one would ever actually make this movie in the reverse. Because, of course, women would protest and you'd hear about it. Men, we got shit to do. You're not going to see a bunch of guys in the streets boycotting this movie or really caring. You'll hear some interesting political commentary about it, but that is also a funny thing to think about. You never see like the average guy just doing at a protest with a sign. Like, probably hours a week I have to work. I can't imagine having time dedicated to go out for such a lot of these random, seemingly random protests. And I can't help but think, how much money is this movie going to lose or make? Like, it can't possibly make that much money. And Mattel is scared shitless. Because again, this is their intellectual property. They invented Barbie back in the day. It's actually a great business, trying to think of a nice way, business success story where they have a husband and wife. The husband invented the Matchbox, or no, the Hot Wheels. And the wife invented Barbie. And they founded that company and they did great things to change the world. And Mattel, they actually got involved in the movie several times saying, hey, we want this to be inclusive. We don't want to have any political messaging. It's supposed to be a fun movie. Sell toys. That's what most of these movies are. It's a toy sales mechanism. And apparently, it just got worse and worse and worse. And now that all the critics are starting to say, "Oh yeah, this is pretty bad." And I mean, so Matt Gaetz' wife specifically called Barbie, they should call for a Barbie boycott because of the disappointing quote-unquote feminine empowerment, lack of faith in family, and Ken's low T. There's this kind of an ultimate cliche in the movie. And it's astonishing to think people are actually going to pay to see it. Granted, I won't because I got stuff to do. But it'll be interesting to see how much money do they lose on that. And of course, how much does it hurt their brand? How many will this decrease the toy sales among conservatives or the people who don't agree with the movie messaging? That's always one of the risks you have when you make a live action movie. Is you're kind of taking away the mystery behind the toy, because the toy, you can see what the toy is, but there's more left to the imagination. It doesn't help the actress of the movie. It doesn't even look like Barbie, but kind of takes away the mystery to a little bit of extent as well. So, as I always say, time shall tell. Now, other interesting cultural news, you have a woke and anti-woke app hitting the App Store. Now, this app is known as Veebs, which D plus for marketing, because what on earth is a Veeb? If you're going to make an app to identify products, why not keep it simple and just say woke, unwoke app, or something like, or woke ID or anti-woke ID. It's like something to actually communicate what the app is and does. That would preferably be logical and make more sense. Now, Veeb is apparently an app that allows users to scan an item. It will tell you if the company is donating money to woke causes or anti-woke causes, and will suggest product alternatives to the company that do not donate to things that are against your ideology. Now, it is brilliant in terms of when they first hit the market or when they first advertised a product, they were saying it's an anti-woke app. So conservatives would use the app and say, hey, what's this? What's Ben & Jerry's? Oh, wow, Ben & Jerry's says that Mount Rushmore should be given back to the indigenous people, even though their headquarters and factory are on, of course, indigenous people's land. And those indigenous people actually wrote a letter to Ben & Jerry's saying, hey, you said you're going to give back Mount Rushmore, the U.S. should give back Mount Rushmore. Are you going to give back your land? And of course they won't, because they're two-faced hypocrites. But that let conservatives know, hey, let's not buy this diabetes in a cup. So the app, in terms of conservatives, getting involved in more of the purchasing power of boycotts. We've seen that more and more past few months, especially with Bud Light instance. But in this case, this app is appealing to both sides of the political aisle, which is what, for making a product, more often than not, that's what you should do. Capture the whole market as much as you can, not just a small niche of it. Like, unless you're a specific political commentary show or you make a specific product for one community, this is usually the best way to build a business, in my 3 cents. Now, it looks like you have this app, which is also in the Google, Android, as well as the Apple stores. But it also reminds me as a wise man that said, they are guarding all the doors and holding all the keys, which means sooner or later, someone will have to fight them. That's Morpheus from The Matrix. I dare not attempt his voice because it's way beyond I don't even have acting skills, my rudimentary voice skills. Either way, some reminiscent of that, because if you do something too dramatic, they'll cut you off from the stores and consumers aren't going to they won't have an app on your phone. And consumers are too lazy to go to a website or bookmark a website, I guess. Now, it's interesting that they actually have 5 filters. So at first I thought it was just for conservatives, which made sense because conservatives, they have some websites when it comes to like identifying what products are made by which companies, but there wasn't a lot of apps. But it looks like there's actually 5 filters. So the filters include liberal. So if you're liberal, you can have the app and it'll tell you, hey, they donated to the NRA or they donated to veterans or some conservative cause. So the liberal will choose not to buy that product. It'll give them alternatives. They also have the conservative filter. So if you're conservative, same thing. It'll scan the app and say, oh, they donated to Planned Parenthood or what have you. Here's some alternatives that did not donate to those causes. Now, they also have a support vets app filter as well. So you can see how a company supports veterans. That's a good one. You also have social justice, which I would argue is kind of redundant. I think there's a lot of overlap with liberal and social justice kind of being one of the same. And they also have an America First app, which it sounds, again, that's conservative, but maybe that's specific for manufacturing and having employees local. And then they also have another filter for the the letters getting longer, the LGBTQIA plus. So then you could scan the app and say, hey, they donated to these parades or these initiatives for the LGBT plus community or LGBT community. So you have all these filters in the same app, and then it'll allow you to donate or purchase products based on what they're using. And this app is pretty smart because those 5 filters cover most of what Americans are thinking about more often than not when they want to purchase a product. And it'll be interesting to see how successful this app can be. It looks like the app is going to cost about 99 cents a month, which they're already kind of shooting themselves in the foot. It looks like it's free to download, but then certain features you need to pay 99 cents a month, and you're already going to alienate some of the audience because a lot of Americans and people in general are kind of desensitized to paying for apps because they think it should be free. Kind of like social media. It's not. There's a huge cost for infrastructure, employees, maintaining it. But they would rather be the product. So they would rather just sell their information as opposed to paying a couple dollars to actually be a member or utilizing an app. So having it being 99 cents per month, that might dissuade some people adopting it. You also do need to have a valid email address and phone number. So depending on your privacy concerns, that might be a little annoying because of course they need to make a profit. Then we're going to either probably sell that to any of those 5 categories. So let's say if you use that filter, and let's say your filter is you want to support veterans. So it'll show you all the products for that. Well, they could take your data and sell it to all the veteran 501c3s or nonprofits because they know you're already looking for products to support that community. So that might be another way that the app is going to generate some money so they can actually make a profit. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here, but as I always say, time shall tell. Now, going on to the political part of the podcast, you have Biden secretly meeting with the UAW president. Now, the UAW is known as the United Auto Workers, and they're the union traditionally for the big 3. So you got General Motors, you got Ford, and you have Chrysler. All very great, reliable vehicles manufacturers. And it looks like they're meeting with the president in regard to the current contract discussions as they're starting to have those renegotiations go on. As the current contracts expire, you have to renegotiate the new contract. And there's also the 9 or 10 millionth reason why Tesla, Toyota, Honda, they're all infinitely better reliability and price because they don't have unions. They have people invested to actually do a good job, which unions, vastly speaking, average, they just incentivize people to be there for a long duration. It's usually you get paid for how many years you served, not how well you served or worked. And the UAW is infamous for having someone they had it to the point where someone was making $68 an hour to put a tire in a car at an assembly line for General Motors. I think it was in 2007, right before the bankruptcy, or one of their bankruptcies. They've gone bankrupt many times. But one of the top reasons GM goes bankrupt again and again, when you look at the pie graph of all their cost, it's the healthcare for the workers, the pensions, and the UAW. All extreme high labor costs. And if you talk to anyone who works at one of those companies, getting anything done has more red tape than the government. Because again, it's not how you make a great product, most would say. Also, Apple products, pretty much most of the products you use that are exceptional, non-labor work. They want people who are incentivized to be the best and make the best, not just work there the longest. But I digress. It looks like their UAW contract with the car companies ends September 14th, and the UAW prodded Biden publicly over provisions in the funding in the IRA, which was that boondoggle, huge omnibus bill, the ironically called the Inflation Reduction Act, which anyone with more than 3 or 4 brain cells should know it did not reduce inflation a little bit. It just printed out more money than God could ever imagine. Now, the UAW criticized Biden over that because Biden needed that because it was the key for his political, economic, and climate agenda. And the union also were poking Biden and saying, hey, why did you allow these $9.2 billion in loans for Ford to make EV batteries in states that are less favorable to unions like Kentucky and Tennessee? Kentucky, I believe, is one of the major states that also Toyota has presence in, where, again, they make the most reliable vehicles in history. That's why consistently a internal combustion engine Toyota vehicle, they're the ones where you look at the list of like who makes the cars that hit 1 million miles, it's a Toyota. Those things are bulletproof, which is another concern of why they're going towards EV when EVs are more like cell phones. They're disposable. You can't work on them. You don't own it. The company does. You own the hardware, not software. I digress. Now, the UAW is also scared to death of electric vehicles for a myriad of reasons. Partially because there's less low-skill labor to make them, and they're much more comparable to computers. Also, there's less components. Just technically speaking, there's less things coming together to make the vehicle. If there's less things coming together to make the vehicle, you don't need to pay someone $100 to put a tire on a car on a union contract. You might need half as many resources. There's also an exponential increase in robotics for the actual assembly and the creation of those vehicles. Tesla probably being the most prominent and successful automotive company to embrace all those giant machines, including the Gigapress, which is a revolutionary automotive technology where they just press out the bodies. Huge competitive advantage, but also big upfront cost. So the UAW, they're pretty scared of the adoption of EVs, as they should be. And as you have all these companies, GM in particular, about 6 months ago, Mary Barra, the CEO, they're committed to cutting, I believe, $2 or $3 billion in cost. And they had a voluntary, it wasn't a layoff, but they said, we'll buy out the rest of your contract if you're an executive, if you're a salaried position at the company, because they're trying to cut away as much cost as they can because they're struggling to stay afloat, yet alone transform into an EV company. And she wants the company to be full EV by 2035. By that time, their EV profit margins should go up because cost of goods traditionally go down. You also have costs going down with aggregate where you could spread that cost around. Similar to if you put up a machine to make doors, for the first 100 doors, compared to 1,000 doors, compared to 100,000 doors, the more doors you make with that same machine, the lower the cost is per unit produced. Because you're amortizing the cost around all of those doors, for that example. And right now, GM as well as Ford, they're losing money on EVs hand over fist because of that huge upfront cost and also the materials. And times will tell to see what's that break-even point and when do they make a profit. Tesla struggled for, I don't know if it's a decade, but several years until they started making profitability. They also invested heavily in being the bleeding edge of technology, although there's concern by market analysts, are they still that way? And what are they going to do for the next chapter of the company? But it's interesting that the UAW, and also another thing, in terms of my personal opinion, the UAW is they put a lot of money into politics, which is why General Motors got bailed out during the 2008 bankruptcy. They just happened to pay out millions upon millions and millions of dollars to the Democratic Party, which one of those things where, oh yeah, you give them money and then they give you money back, which is why there's a lot of controversy around teachers unions where teachers unions will give a bunch of money to a campaign in terms of politician. The politician will then increase their wages or increase their salaries when they get elected. Some would call that bribery and corruption. Some. But time, as I always say, shall tell to see what happens to the UAW. Now, other interesting political news, you have New York City mayor turning migrants away. Some might say that's racist. Now, they're literally actually putting out flyers that say no vacancy. Now, it's one of those things where there's a few things I disdain more than hypocrites and charlatans. And traditionally speaking, New York is a sanctuary state where they would proudly say, we will not prosecute any illegal immigrants. Just come here. We won't prosecute you. We'll be a haven for you. California is very famous for this. Many people wonder why they're doing this. Well, it's because the state census is not based on citizens. It's based on population, regardless of if you're there legally or not. And depending on your population is how many people get to send House of Representatives. So it actually gives you more people and more influence in the government. Someone call that cheating. But yeah, I know some, including me, I would call that cheating. And before you say something about my family swimming here, ridiculous. We actually came on a plane from Cuba, believe it or not, when they had planes. Now, this specifically looks like the administration wants to hand out these flyers to asylum seekers and even go to the southern border, discouraging them from coming to New York City. Now, specifically, this is from hypocrite New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who, of course, is a Democrat, and he has said for months that his city has no more capacity for house-seeking asylumers. Isn't that what the border countries have been saying for decades? Again, it's not a matter of caring or animus. It's you have finite resources. If you overwhelm those resources, the system can't handle it. Some say they're overwhelming it by design to destroy the system. That's a topic in and of itself. But for years, places like New York, they proudly broke federal law to just let people go there regardless of their status. And now they're saying, oh no, but no one's calling them racist for doing this. The Texas governor, they were calling him a racist when he wants to protect his borders. Now that New York City mayor is concerned that they can't handle that influx of people with their infrastructure and the resources at the moment, no one's calling him out as a hypocrite. No one's calling him out as being racist. It's almost as if there's a double standard in media, which is yet another reason why, I don't know how profitable long-term traditional media will be around for. Time shall tell. Now, going on to the business blunder of the day, you have Goldman Sachs profits down 58%, which, again, I know the United States schools are struggling. I try to help every day with education because I know math scores are all-time low. Same with history. That's more than half. 58% is more than half. Now, this is as the bank is pulling back on their consumer lending and taking impairments related to real estate investment. So yeah, that's not a good day. If you're, especially you're doing corporate real estate, that's not a good business to be in because every business I know is pulling back on their square footage of their corporate headquarters and their actual office spaces. More and more people are working from home for myriad reasons, including convenience, optimization. So yeah, in terms of, again, I'm not a financial guru or I don't have a fiduciary responsibility or I'm not a financial genius, but I think it'd be a prudent business decision not to invest in corporate real estate. Now, Goldman Sachs saw its investment banking revenue decline by 20% the second quarter 2023, and according to the latest filings released last Wednesday, their trading revenue also fell by 14%. Now, overall, their profit fell by 58% compared to a year ago to $1.2 billion. That marks the worst quarterly profits since early 2020 during the pandemic-induced recession. Now, I think that's a typo actually from, this is Forbes. It wasn't a pandemic-induced recession. It was the government and the government's decisions to lock down the economy. That's what caused the recession. But semantics, I know. And back in 2023, January this year, they lost $3 billion on consumer lending. And this is also perhaps why they're trying to get out of the current contracts they have with companies such as Apple, and then I think as well as General Motors, where they have these little loyalty reward cards, and you have the Apple Pay card. And apparently Goldman Sachs is actually losing money on that initiative. So they're trying to cut back on all these things as they're trying to stop the bleeding because they're just losing more and more money. And right now with unprecedented 40-year hyperinflation and all the uncertainty of the economy, all these businesses are trying to figure out how do we stop the bleeding, how do we stabilize the companies? And they're taking less risk because of that. But as they move all these things around to make such a business blunder, to lose so much money in such a small amount in just a single year, that's got to be the business blunder of the day, bar none. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Also, we're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of this month, so if you click that subscribe button, would really appreciate it. Also, don't forget to like and comment. Those things greatly help the video get shared to more and more people. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.